Tell us what your inspiration to get into regression therapy, reincarnation research, all of the above.
Mm-hmm.
What was it that made you decide to go that route with your career?
Well, growing up in England, it's not a big stretch because we do believe in fairies at the bottom of the garden, and we know there's ghosts, and we live that environment, and it's not a big deal. So when I came to Canada and realized that not everybody could see auras, or not everybody believed in ghosts, or believed that it was possible that the soul went on to other lands or other places or planets, I was quite shocked. But at that time, I was a journalist, and I came to Canada and was a journalist for a few years, and then opened a PR company, which was bought by a very large American PR company. And I became their creative director for Canada. And then after that, they asked me to open another company for them to take competitive business, which was sort of fun. And then they took me back to the mothership and asked me to become managing director for their 4 offices across Canada, which I did for about 8 years. And then I got tired of the corporate world. I got very tired of it. I felt like I was being bruised every day. You know, my soul was being bruised. And one day I just said, I can't do this anymore. And I left. And I looked for something to do. I mean, really look for something to do. And I knew it had to do with people, not corporations. So I studied Gestalt therapy. I did some psychodrama therapy training. I took Reiki. Became a Reiki master. And I happened upon hypnosis. And it really was a eureka moment. I took the training from the National Guild of Hypnotists, and I could see the connection between the subconscious mind and spirituality. So I hunted down a teacher that I could respect and wasn't too woo-woo, because I'm not a very woo-woo person. It has to be pragmatic for me. And I found Henry Bolduc. I don't know if that name means anything to you, but goodness, what a superb teacher he was. And then after that, I took Michael Newton's last training in England. And I just felt I'd come home. It made so much sense, and it just fits. It is the most profound connection to the tapestry of life, of everything that we live, and everything to do with nature and other people and animals and trees and other planets and everything, the electrons, the energy, everything. Once we realize that we are operating on this dimension, I'm preaching to the converted here, I know, but forgive me. Once we realize we're operating on this level, and the only reason we're only operating on this level is because our eyes are not trained to see any other level. Our mind isn't trained to see any or receive any other information. We can only see in 3D or 5D or whatever. So I get very excited all the time. And now, since 1997, I've been doing this work, and I'm still passionate about it. I'm still excited by it. And one morning I woke up and I heard in my ear, my right ear, because that's where I get my messages, it's time to teach where you're not. And that's when I wrote my first book called Return Again, about past life regression and life between lives. And that's when I started using my journalistic experience to write books. So here I am. This is today. And like the old little engine, I just keep chugging along. And, teaching the university 4 times a year, 3 semesters, 26 people per class, teaching past life regression, life between lives, spirit and entity release, master hypnosis classes. It's what it is. It's what I'm here for.
Oh, I love it. It tells me that the universe was guiding you. Don't you sometimes feel like somebody is orchestrating these
Oh,
things?
no question. It's like when I write my books. This book is different because I've only written 3, 4, 5 chapters of it. It's written by other people, but as well. But sometimes I don't remember what I've written. I read it the following day, and I know it was downloaded.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, I just know.
Yeah. And I love what you said about the mind is not trained.
Mm-mm.
Oh my goodness. That to me is what from meditation is where I got started. And so
Yeah.
that was a wonderful segue into hypnotherapy. But meditation and hypnosis are a wonderful way to train the mind, isn't it?
Yes, but we still only have the capability, the cellular capability in the body, this body, cellular capability of seeing and interacting at the moment with what we perceive is real around us.
Yeah.
Like I equate it sometimes, those billboards that turn, and every time they turn, there's another picture. I mean, that's why you see ghosts, because they've slipped through the veil. So when when the billboard turns, you get another whole world, another world on another level. That's my view anyway.
That's a great analogy. I love that. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love meditation, because I take the time to contemplate those views. And of course, learning regression therapy, you learn to go back and look at that, slow it down, and really get the message of it. So,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
And then also some people, of course, slip into a past life where they are on another planet, although it never occurred to them that could be.
Have you had that happen very often?
It happens. It happens. I would say out of a year of seeing hundreds of clients, I would say maybe 20 or 30 times. Not that often, but it does certainly happen.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what
Or
what
another.
is their experience like? Is it, I'm so curious about what these other world experiences are.
Well, they say things, for instance, some of the things that I have had in the clinics, someone might say, this is really strange. I feel like I'm in water, but it's not water. So, and I'm thinking, well, maybe they've become a dolphin or something. Your mind wonders what they've become. And I say, are you an animal? No, 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 I'm in human form, but it's sort of a collective form. And we emerge from this liquid when we have something to accomplish, when there's an energetic need for us to accomplish something. When we have accomplished it, we go back into liquid. Now, I don't know about you, but I couldn't have made that up. I don't know that anybody could have made that up. And another young man said, this is weird. The earth, the soil, it's the land, it's red. And this is many, many, many years ago. So he was on another planet. But it doesn't matter because it's all learning. So what did they bring from that experience into this experience? And why did the soul take them there? Why there? Because they had something to learn, to bring into this planet.
Wonderful. So as you were inspired to do the self-discovery book, evidently you had connections with all of these different people. So it made you such a wonderful conduit. And of course, with your journalistic background, tell us how that came to be.
Okay. Well, it was interesting because I was chatting with a client one day, and I thought, funny, this woman has such a self-deprecating view of who she is at a soul level. And when we parted ways, it dawned on me that a lot of what we see ourselves and experience ourselves as is what society has told us we are. what our parents have told us we are, what our teachers have told us we are. But at no time have we, unless you're in deep therapy for a while, at no time do you stand back and say, but who am I? Really, who am I? Never mind all of this other stuff that people have told me I am, both good and bad. And I thought, you know, there's so many ways of finding out more about the personality, some very ancient tools and some very modern tools. Wouldn't it be fun to gather people all in one room? And I was thought of having some sort of clinic. And then I thought, I can't do this, especially, you know, just COVID time and all of that. But I could certainly get them to write a chapter, because the people that are in this book all see clients, they all run workshops, and they all have deep experience. And so when I contacted them and said, hey, what do you think about this? Would you like to take part in it? They said, love it, love the idea. It's a great idea. So everybody from Granddaughter Crow, who's a First Nations woman who lives in the Midwest in the US, to someone who runs the Center for Innovation at one of the universities in Canada, talking about creativity. They all have specialties. And I learned a lot, because I don't know a lot of this stuff. I only know the ones I know about what I've written. I certainly didn't know about hand reading. I knew you could read palms, but I didn't know how to do it. I knew about astrology, but I don't know how to read a chart. So there's a lot, and numerology and dreams. And I thought at the end, at each chapter, it'd be fun for people to write down or journal what they've learned about themselves at the end of each chapter. And then at the end of the book, put it all together and introduce yourself to your new self. Hi, my name is Georgina Cannon. I found out I'm an 8, and an 8 means that my strengths are blah, 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 blah. I found out that, you know, my hands show this. I found out that my enneagram shows this. I mean, isn't it fun? I mean, I thought it was fun. So that's why I did it. And I'm getting, people are writing in and saying, I didn't know this about myself, which is great. And archetypes. I mean, I use archetypes when I'm working with a client a lot, but most people don't. Most people don't think about that part of them, and they don't use the archetypes to help them solve problems, which is what I encourage my clients to do. So yes, so it's exciting. It's like gathering all these experts in one room, and you just pay the price of the book. You don't have to pay each of them hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
That's wonderful. It's a great introduction for people who have not been exposed to these things. And it sounds as if you actually introduced yourself to some things that you had not explored previously. If I heard you correctly, it almost feels like it took you to the edge of woo-woo.
Anything that's supposedly woo-woo, if it's not practical and it doesn't enhance your current life, I'm not interested. Because my point of view is, we're here. Let's make this life as rich and as juicy and as fun and as rewarding for humanity as possible. So let's use all of this information, all of the knowledge that we have, all of the depth and the breadth, and who we are at our very best for the betterment of humankind. Otherwise, what are we here for?
Exactly.
So it's not woo-woo. It's very pragmatic from my point of view.
Yeah, well, and that's a great point, a perspective to look at. You know, how can these things help us? I feel very much the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, so many people think, why even remember a past life? But as you well know, that past life can be so strongly imprinted on the present one that you cannot be present to the present.
Right. You have to clear up whatever it is.
Yeah.
So as I look through some of the chapter names, for instance, things like birth order. I used to, when I ran the company, large company, I used to hire on birth order. That's how much I believe in it. But it's in the book because it helps you understand yourself, your strengths, the parts of you that maybe you've overlooked. It's interesting when I was talking to Lisa about reading hands, I said, how can you just tell from what's and how those lines formed? And she said, well, you're a believer in the mind-body connections. I said, yes. So she said, well, your body changes according to your mind. She said, show me your hand. So, and this was on Zoom, so I held up my hand, I put it on the screen. And she said, wow, you're resilient. Yes, I am. How did you know? Well, it shows in your hand, is what she said. And she didn't know a lot about me except what she'd read somewhere. Now, isn't that magic? I find it magical and extraordinary. And she works a lot with, she's in LA, so she works a lot with the film people. She's got a lot of stars in her book. So she just is a special person too. Everyone in the book is very special. They're givers. They're people who want to make your life better. Even doesn't that add energy to a book or anything when you gather people who want to make life better for people?
I love that. And you can, it's palpable.
Yeah.
Just holding the book in your hand, it's palpable. Reading each one of the stories, it resonates. I love that word resonance, because when I find something that resonates with me, I mentioned before that I have dyslexia, but when something resonates with me, I don't have the same problems reading it as something that does not resonate with me. Isn't that odd?
Well, not really. When you think about it, it has a straight path to your heart.
Yes, exactly. And hey, by the way, I actually read palms.
Good. There you go.
I got lost I was working in the library, and I got lost in the metaphysical section one day when I was shelving books, and I picked up this book about palm reading. So I started learning how to read palms. I was about 17 years old. This was back when I was in college. And but then I forgot what the lines meant. But they kept talking to me anyway. I later found out what I really do is psychometry.
Yeah.
But it starts with the lines. And I could, even without looking at yours, I can feel your energy is someone who has a very, very strong will. That's a word that when you just held your hand up very briefly, I felt the energy screaming at me. Strong will.
Screaming. Well.
Yeah, well, in a good way.
Okay.
To be able to share that. And if you held your hand up, I'd show you exactly how I would know that. So move it over. Yep, absolutely right. So, and look, you've got that triangle too. So the headline, I got just a really quick look at it, and it has a really strong arc. And that's always an indication of someone who has a strong will. So
Good. Great.
Yeah. Like I say, I pick these things up energetically, not just by the lines.
I think the more work we do in this world, the more we pick up.
Exactly. Do you find that you do that in your regression work and hypnosis
yes,
also?
But I make sure, and I preach this too, I make sure to stay out of the way. This is where Dolores Cannon and I separate. And we knew each other, and we used to
no relation.
No relation. We never actually met. We passed each other literally in Australia. I was on a book tour. She was there teaching, and I was in Sydney, and she was in Adelaide. And we thought we'd meet, but we never did. It was so funny. We were both there at the same time.
Yeah.
But no, she believes that you could get into the past life and make change or counsel people, and I believe we should stay out of it and just because there's a life they lived and they have a lesson to. Anyway, I'm not going to preach at people here, but we have different beliefs. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I
Stay out of the way.
the same. Yeah,
Yeah. We're just facilitators. That's all we are.
that's right. And so one of your chapters really, really intrigues me. It's the one about relationships, chapter number 15. You and your relationships. Can you talk a little bit about that? Was an intriguing chapter, because I in self-reflection, I look at the various relationships that I've had in my life, and some that are still a little sticky wicket, and so I was hoping to learn more out of that. So I wanted to be sure and ask you about that chapter.
Sure. Actually, I've written a whole book on relationships. It's called The Third Circle Protocol. And the concept is this: everybody that you meet, whether it be you and I, Carol, or Maxine and I, or John and I, anybody you meet, there's an unspoken contract that you have expectations of each other. So even if you go into the supermarket and you're checking out, you've got the cashier there, you expect something from the cashier and they expect something from you. It's a contract. And most of the time, we don't even think about relationships that way. And our relationships are either successful or unsuccessful if we know what our value system is. What do we stand for? What's important to us? Because once we know our value system, if kindness is one of them, laughter is another, the outdoors is another, whatever the values, the top 8 or 9 or 10 values, if you don't live your values, you don't have boundaries. And if you don't have boundaries, you keep meeting people and matching with people that it doesn't work out, both friendships, love relationships, and sometimes family. And I found this to be true. And what over the years of working with clients. But if you live your values and you know who you are, then you'll automatically attract people who know who you are and what you stand for. And your relationship will have a solid ground, first with yourself and then with the other person. Because until you know who you are and what you stand for, how can anybody else know who you are and what you stand for? Now, they may like the way you laugh, they may like the way you look, they may think you're great in bed, all of that. But something's going to go wrong if you don't have the same set of values. But first, you have to have that relationship with yourself. And the book is called The Third Circle, and it covers every relationship, including your in-laws, your partner for life, your ex, your kids, you and your kids, you and your partner for life, you and your ex, you and the professionals in your life, every relationship. But first of all, and most importantly, you and yourself. And that's what this is really about. That chapter talks about the importance of living your values. And most people don't think what their values are. They just don't. It never occurs to them. Because we take snapshots of people. You know, I don't know about you, but sometimes when you go to family gatherings, you see adults treat each other like they were 10 years old. And their parents treat them like they were 5 years old. Because we've taken a snapshot and we treat that person just like that. And unless you have an understanding of who you are today, then you're going to react inappropriately. But if you know your value is kindness or generosity of spirit or whatever it is, then you'll just take it and laugh and say, come on, that was 25 years ago, guys. Let's all grow up together. You handle it differently, both inside and outside. I don't want to sound
I'm so glad I asked you this question. That is such a marvelous answer. I really appreciate that. And it really resonates with me a lot.
Yeah. I hope I don't sound like I'm preaching, but this is something I really, really believe in. Yeah.
Preaching to the choir.
Good. No, nice choir. We should all sing together. Yes.
Yeah, and I want to let anyone else ask any question. Just raise your hand and unmute yourself.
Sure.
Let's see. Go to gallery view.
Yeah.
Would anyone like to ask a question? I know John always has great questions. Oh,
yeah,
and
I was
Mary,
trying to formulate one, but yeah, and nice to see you. And we share some similarities. I was an ad guy. I worked for Compton in New York, and had an ad agency I sold. And in 1998, I began doing this kind of work full time as a hypnotist, general practitioner, though, smoking, weight, stress. And I was on the down low with this stuff. You know, you mentioned woo-woo. I have an aversion to woo-woo as well. And mine is about validation and evidence. If somebody says something, I really want to know, really, you know, is that your belief structure, or you know, why should I believe you?
Right.
You know, you say that you were Cleopatra's bodyguard. Well, really, you know.
What does she do in her spare time? Tell me about that.
Well, there you go. At any rate, though, I find life very, very interesting. And I find your career very, very impressive.
Does the name Burson Marsteller mean anything to you?
Beg pardon?
Burson Marsteller?
That's not ringing a bell.
Okay, it was they were the world's largest PR company out of New York City.
Oh, I was. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I misheard you.
Okay.
Yeah, I was an ad guy. I wrote TV commercials, and my agency was business to business.
Okay.
But you know, creativity. I basically used my mind to sell people things, as you did. And my mission now is to try to sell people on other kinds of stuff. And as an advocate, I think there are a lot of people on the planet who are meant to be channels for this kind of stuff.
Yes.
And you know, a humble channel, but to be a channel. So
well, it's an honor.
It is an honor.
It's an honor.
It's also a calling.
Yeah.
You know, I wrote a book recently, and I'm not even sure how it came about. I just started writing it, and I've got a new project I'm doing now. I'm not even quite sure where it comes from. And I think it's probably a little bit similar for you, a little bit, kind of backed into it. So I'd rather just listen, though. Oh, and I like the fact you got all these people together. That was very, very, and Carol does a lot of that here with the book club. Carol is a great bringer together of people, and that's a skill I've never mastered, but one I admire greatly.
A connector. She's a
connector.
Yeah, connector.
Thank you, John. I knew you would have a great question. And Mary Grace has her hand up. So go ahead and ask your question, Mary Grace.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. I just wanted to bring out that I study theosophy through Alice Bailey and Madame Blavatsky. And one of the important things to discover who you are and what your values and your influences are, the rays. There are 7 different rays. I'm not going to get into that, but that's another method. And there's a book by Michael Singer called The Untethered Soul. And that also asks you to look at who you are and examine yourself. So I thought there were 2 good sources. I wanted to know the name of your book again.
The one on relationships, or the one on past lives? One on relationships is called the Third Circle Protocol.
And the one on past lives?
Return Again.
Okay, and I had one question, and that is, when you're talking about seeing things or seeing things differently, how important do you think it is that you need to raise your vibration in order to have that ability?
Well, that's I've got 2 answers to that. First of all, I don't think we physiologically have the ability right now, number one, to see what's in our bodies, in the brain cells right now. We don't have that physiologically, but we can do it through energy. a certain amount, but I don't know that, and I really don't know that we can still see everything, because there's so much out there that we just are not able to see or understand. You know, I've done a lot of regression work. I don't know if you know, but I go to people, they fly me down to Gaia quite a bit. I appeared on Gaia quite a bit. And I've researched and regressed people who've traveled from planet to planet. And some of the things they tell me they've seen and experienced, I'm not so sure they could have seen it without being there. We can't imagine, our brains aren't trained to imagine anything we haven't already recognized and acknowledged as being there.
Can I just say one more thing? Edgar Casey was a great believer in that, and he often talked in his readings about people going to other planets in between lives.
Yes, indeed he did. I envy him to be able to put his head on a book and absorb the book. I want that. I want to be able to do that. Just put my head on a book and have all that information go and come into my brain.
Thank you, Mary Grace. Those were great questions.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have a question that they would like to ask?
Maxine.
Just a comment about when you mentioned other planets. And I studied with you a number of months ago. The very first client I had was something totally unexpected. What am I going to do with this? Because it was totally unbelievable, the experience that she was having, and there was no other nothing that I could come up with other than this was not of this earth. She was definitely viewing something else. It wasn't pleasant. It was more like the devastation, but it was clearly either something that was down the road or from another place. It wasn't over this time.
Well, I'm glad you had the training to prepare you. That's fun. Yes,
I was ready for everything after that.
Anything's easy after that one. Okay. Yeah. Anybody else? Wendy, anything? Carol?
I'd love to know what case, what client that you remember really made an impact on you.
I had, and I tell this story because it was so profound. I had a client come to me who said that she was going into surgery and she wanted to do a regression because she didn't know who she was. So I said to her, what does that mean? So she said, well, when I was about 17, we're not sure whether I was 17 or 18, I found myself sitting on a bench in Toronto in a park without anything, no purse, no nothing, no identification. I got some bumps and some scratches and some bruises, and I didn't know where I was or who I was. And I started to cry, and this woman came up to me and said, can I help you? She took me home. We called the police, and there was no record of any car accidents or anything. And I stayed with her for quite a while, and she gave me the name. We chose my name. And I started working at the Arthur Murray Dance School, and there I met the man that became my husband. And he was the only one who knew that I didn't know who I was. And we've been married and she was married for a long, long time. And I've never been able to travel because I don't have any papers. I don't have a passport. I don't have any background. Even my doctor doesn't have any knowledge of only what he can gather with, his current experience. So, but I'm going in for surgery. I'm getting, I forget what it was, something to do with the heart. And I'm concerned, and I want to know if we can find out who I am. So if anything happens to me, I just want to know. So I regressed her back, and she became 12 years old, and she panicked, and she brought herself out of hypnosis. And she said, I can't do this. I said, what's happening? She said, I don't know, something very frightening. I can't. So I said, okay, fine. And I said, you know, why don't we just get you ready for surgery? So put her back into hypnosis, got her body and her mind in harmony together, working with the surgeons, working with the people so that she became part of the team. So she would heal quicker. A few months later, not that many months later, she came back and said, you know, that was amazing. The doctor was so surprised I healed so quickly. I really do want to do this. I want to find out who I am. And my husband is out in the waiting room. So I said, great, okay. I'm going to try something different. So she said, Georgina, I trust you. Okay. So what I did is I took her into the womb and had her come back from the womb. So we didn't go into past life. She was in the womb and then she was birthed. And the minute she started to come through the birth canal, she brought herself out of hypnosis and said, I know who I am. I know who I am. And she got up out of the chair and she ran out into the reception area and said, John, I've got a name. I've got a name. And out they went. And the receptionist said to me, they didn't pay. So I said, it's okay, don't worry about it. So, and a few days later, I get an email saying, Georgina, I have to show you this. And the email said, I can't believe this. You're the sister we've been looking for years. Because all of this happened to her at age 17. This is before the internet. They had been to, they'd hired detectives. They'd been to lawyers. They'd tried everything they could before the internet. Her family, her sisters, had been looking for her through the internet. And they found her name because her husband posted the name and went through there must be some sort of search programs that do this. And she said, my sister is coming and coming to Toronto. They're from the States, coming to Toronto, and we want you to meet them. So her sister and her husband, they invited me to lunch in Toronto, this restaurant in a big mall called Yorkdale. And as soon as I walked in, I could tell it was her sister. They looked like bookends. They were both looked the same. They both wore their hair up in like this. And it was uncanny. And what had happened was, I didn't go into it in too much detail, but it seems that the parents were addicts. The kids barely had anything to eat. And at some point, they sold the girls off as prostitutes when they were quite young. I mean young, like 7, 8, 9, 10. And then they got dispersed because Children's Aid or whatever the equivalent is came and took them into care, but the care people were just as bad. So, but I never did find out how she ended up in Toronto because she's from the States. And after that, of course, she went to the American Embassy, got her passport. She did everything. She just traveled, and every time for the first year and a half, everywhere they went, they'd send me a postcard. Look where we are now. That story was so great. I put it in Michael Newton's book, one of his books, because he asked me to write a chapter for him. And when I met, and I'm not name dropping here, but it's part of this true story. When I met Shirley MacLaine for coffee, because she comes to Toronto sometimes to shoot movies. She said to me, why didn't you ask her what happened? So I said, it's not what she wanted, and I wasn't going to pry. It was painful. She said, but don't you know? Aren't you curious? I said, well, maybe. But she could tell me what she wanted to tell me. But it changed her life. To me, that's the most profound story ever. I mean, we've had other people do wonderful things, but that changed her life. She found out who she really was.
What a beautiful story. That is so amazing. And gosh, what a great way for you to introduce herself. Talk about self-discovery.
Yes.
That is probably one of the best cases I've ever heard of that.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Something told me I need to ask you that question. And I knew about your connection with Shirley MacLaine, so I was planning on asking you if there's anything that you wanted to share about that relationship. I'm sure that that's a fun one to be in.
First of all, most people don't realize how smart she is. She's extraordinarily smart. She retains everything she's ever read. She's probably the most well-read person I have ever met. Anything to do with ancient texts. She has a curiosity that's beyond my understanding, and I ask a lot of questions. We have to remember she's a diva because she's been famous since she was 17. So she's an amazing woman. She can pick up the phone and talk to anybody. I wouldn't say we were friends at all, but we're friendly. And when she comes to Toronto, we have coffee or we have a lunch or breakfast, depending on her schedule. And she's a joy to be with because she's curious about everything. Oh, and I must tell you this story. She came up into the clinic and she said, "Oh, Georgina, I've been here a few times. I've never seen your clinic. I'm going to come to your clinic." So I said, "Okay." So we went to the clinic and she looked around. She said, "Who painted that picture? Who did that?" Always questions. She said, "You know what? Why don't you take me through a past life regression session?" Gulp. Don't know about you, but So I said, sure, okay, Shirley, sit in the hypnosis chair. So she sat in the chair. I put on the music. No, I don't want music. Okay, turned off the music. I started talking her down into hypnosis. And at one point she put up her hand and said, "Be quiet, please, be quiet. Please be quiet." Okay, so I was quiet and I just sat looking at her. She was off somewhere, obviously, watching my watch. And after about 20 minutes, I thought, I'm not sitting here much longer. So I said, "In a moment, I'm going to count you out from 10 to 1 and bring you back into this lifetime." I did that. She said, "Oh, that was good. I'm sorry, dear." She said, "I'm sorry, darling. I'm so sorry. But you know what? I do this so much by myself. Your voice just got in the way." so that was my, excuse me, that was my past life exploit with Shirley MacLaine.
Oh, that is too funny.
My voice got in the way.
Isn't that interesting? But I sense that you were holding the energy for her.
I don't know that she needs anyone to hold her energy, to be honest. She's very complete as a person, and so smart, so unbelievably knowledgeable, deep and wide. It's extraordinary.
Wonderful.
Yeah, amazing.
So I wanted to also ask you, do you use any techniques that are non-hypnotic? I find that's happening more and more
Yes.
in regression therapy. So I was wondering what techniques, if any, you use that are non-hypnotic.
Yes, indeed I do. When I was working with one of the gentlemen on Gaia, he was concerned that he wouldn't be able to remember because, he said, Georgina, when you're in the military, they wipe your memory chemically. I said, "Yes, I know that. I've heard that. And I understand that is so." I said, "But we carry our memory in different places. It's not only in the brain. It's in your energy field around you, and it's also in your body." So I worked with him that way, and we got a lot of information. So yes, it depends on the person.
That's wonderful. Yeah. And, so many people are so analytical and left brain thinking that some of these non-hypnotic techniques can be very helpful for them as well.
Well, sometimes I say to them, "Well, let's not go into hypnosis. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, how about, can you relax down? Close your eyes and I wonder if you can feel your feet in your shoes. And I wonder if you can feel your back against the back of the chair. And I wonder if you can imagine seeing a rose and smelling that rose." Before you know it, where they are, they're in hypnosis. Except you don't tell them it's hypnosis and they don't know it, and they just go where they go.
Yeah.
Again, it's pragmatic and it works.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
You make it so smooth and easy. So it's just delightful, I'm sure.
I hope so.
Yeah.
That's the goal. That's the goal, to make it useful, make it life-changing or life-deepening, whatever works. Yeah. And help people understand themselves more, to understand their role in the tapestry of life, and understand that they are powerful. And I end a lot of my meditations with clients and students by saying, be the blessing you already are, because that is enough. And once the client realizes that, they start to live up to it. Yeah.
So true.
Mhm.
So very true. So does anyone else have any other questions? Yeah, Smita.
So, really enjoying this conversation, Georgina, with you, and just listening to your wonderful experiences. I have clients who also go to other planetary spaces and dimensions. And what I have found with some of my clients is that it's interesting how they have certain gifts which they bring from their home planet or dimension, and they're using those gifts here. So there's a little bit of similarity in what they're doing. Is that something you found in your work as well?
Yes. Yeah, because we take ourselves everywhere we go, right? Past life, this life, wherever we go, we take ourselves.
True.
So yes, it's no different. Absolutely. Yeah. Which is sometimes why someone will say, you know, I play the violin, and I'm the only person in our family going back generations who is even musical, never mind playing the violin, but I've had a longing to play the violin since I was a child. Well, yeah. It's got to come from somewhere.
I love that. In fact, for me, I feel like that's what I call the occupational therapy aspect of regression therapy. To remember those skills that you have and carried from other lifetimes. And I really believe that the more we tap into that, the easier it makes this life that we're living now. So,
sure.
Wonderful.
Yeah, the other thing that I have also noticed is sometimes they like to go back to their home because it's so healing and their earth life is so difficult.
Yeah, they need to rest. It's hard work being here for some. They need to go back and just sigh and yeah. I want to go home and just relax and rest. Yeah, be at peace for a while. And I certainly understand that, especially now. Does anybody else notice what's happening to the energy in the world this last year? It's become very fractured. Yeah. Very fractured. Everybody's having a hard time. More earthquakes, more fires, more wars, more battles, more hate, more, yeah. Anyway, I don't want to get into that. Any other questions or concerns?
I got a comment quickly. The other Cannon, Dolores Cannon.
Yes.
In the last symposium that Carol did, one of the speakers channeled her, and she spoke to us. It was kind of exciting.
Cool.
And I asked her on the other side, are you going to come right back? And she said, no, she needs a break for a while. So take that for what it is, but that was what happened.
Yeah, for sure.
It's tiring down here.
It is. It's exhausting.
And the energy has changed, and it's a very good idea to unplug the television, I find. But my heart goes out for the whole world. It's everybody's in chaos, it seems.
Chaos
I don't know where it's going to lead.
And fractured. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And Wendy had a question.
Yes, I'm also really, really enjoying the whole conversation. Thank you so much. Georgina, I was just wondering, well, first of all, I think it's fantastic that you have that many students every single time you teach that are interested in this. Just fantastic. I I wondered if you often have individuals that you work with that progress, that go into a future life.
No, because I don't encourage it.
Yeah.
I'm one of those strange people that believe that this is a planet of free will.
Oh, yes.
And I just don't encourage it. And people do ask for that. And I say, you're going to have to find someone else. I'm not the person for you to do that.
And I think I agree with that as well. I guess one of the things I remember my guides telling me at one point a long time ago when I was just reading, I think, Michael Newton's books and discovering a number of different books, Brian Weiss and so on and so forth. But I was told that I had come back from the future to be here now. And I remember thinking, what? You know, that really stuck with me. And then as I studied more and more, and to me just felt like, well, it's all now time. You know,
That's right.
we focus where we are, wherever we're focusing, that's where we are. So past, present, and future. And that fell into place then for me to be able to understand that. But it's just been fascinating. I so enjoy working with many different people of very diverse backgrounds, but this has been extremely interesting tonight. So thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
We never know where the conversation is going to go in this group, and that's what I love about it. It's so wonderful. You've touched a lot of different points, I can tell, for all of us. So as we wrap up, I'd love to ask you the question I love to ask everyone is, what do you feel our purpose in this reincarnation process? Why do you feel we're here?
I believe that we're here to do two things. One is to remind people to put their roots deep down into the earth, because that is where we're living right now, and be part of the earth, the planet, and be part of it along with the trees and the flowers and the grasses. And the other is to reflect the light of the Creator, however one manifests that in your own life, because we're all sparks of the Creator. We're all a piece of the Creator. And I believe that we are here to shine the light and to be firm in our commitment to be the best of what, use the best of what we've been given for the best of humanity. And humanity isn't only, for me, isn't only humans. It's every living thing on the planet, including dogs and cats. And I see a little one up there. Carol has one on her lap. And I believe that. I believe very strongly that we're not singular. We are part of everything. And I think it's our job to help others recognize that. And the more, and I tell my clients this, and I also tell my students this, the more work you do with the subconscious mind, the more you're connected, because it opens you up. So be prepared to find yourself becoming a tree hugger. And they go, yeah. But no. I said, you wait, just wait till the end of level 3, just wait. And yeah, it's all to do with just taking what you have and using it to the best possible use. I mean, it's not very good English, but I hope I'm making myself clear. I'm not very glib about this stuff. I feel it more than I can talk it.
That's a beautiful answer. I'm sure we all resonate with those. And Tell us about your meditation. You do a meditation almost every Friday, I believe.
Yes, I put it on hold for a while because I wasn't very well, but it's going to start again at the probably middle November. Every Friday, it's free, and people from around the world literally join. And if you want to be part of it, you just contact me, and we'll put you on the list. And it's at noon Eastern Standard Time, and it runs for about 30 to 35 minutes. And it's guided meditation. It's really group hypnosis, but it's usually spiritual. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. You know, in March, I usually do something about exercise and move the body and that. But generally speaking, it's all about healing and growth and spirituality and meeting your soul mates, meeting your guides and that sort of thing. Yeah. So people from literally all over the world come in. Sometimes there's 25 people, sometimes there's 80 people, 100 people, all on Zoom.
Can you give us your email contact?
Sure, Georgina at georginacannon.com. Or if you want to get on the mailing list, write to L, my assistant, E-L-L-E, at georginacannon.com.
Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your time and energy, for writing, for teaching, for all the connections that you've made throughout your careers, met multiple careers, and keep up the good work that you're doing. There's so much that you're adding to the world. So
Thank you. Thank
you so very, very much. Can we give her a round of applause?
Thank you.